Guru Nation, welcome to episode 177 of Random Musings from the Clinical Trials Guru. This is Dan Sfera. Today I'm going to talk about something extremely important, and it is about how to send email pitches for BizDev, for whether you're a research site. I mean, a lot of the people that are going to be watching are going to be sites looking to get studies. But it also can apply to industry vendors, although the wording is going to be different. But the concept is the same. There's an initial email pitch. And let's even rewind it back just a little bit further. Okay, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So, business development, and I'm just going to speak for the research clinics, even though if you are an industry vendor, you can adjust accordingly based on your target audience, right? But the concept's the same. There are inbound, if you've been in the industry long enough, and if you're lucky to have been operating as a business, as a research site, long enough, and by long enough, could be 1 year, could be 2 years, could be a few months, depending on the studies. You can be receiving inbound study leads from past sponsors and past CROs. So if you've been doing well on the studies that you did get, you could be lucky enough to be getting inbound leads. All right, that means leads coming to you where you're not doing anything. Right? It's just a repeat business. Now, that will happen, but even when you are experienced, that's going to happen most likely not at the rate that you are needing it to be, right? Like, you need a certain number of studies every year for your clinic, whether you're a startup, whether you're an experienced site. There's lots of volatility in this industry. There's it seems like it's feast or famine at times, and that presents its own sets of challenges, which we're going to get into later. But as far as business development, okay, the inbound leads, the ones where you passively are receiving studies from sponsors and CROs that you've hopefully done a good job for, or else they wouldn't be coming back to you, are going to be the exceptions, not the rules. And yes, you can make a living off of just passive study leads. I've done it for years, although, interestingly enough, because of that volatility I mentioned, if you rest on your laurels too much, the pipeline will dry up. And there's nothing worse for a research clinic than a dry pipeline, meaning the only studies you have are the studies in your clinic, and there's nothing on the horizon. That is a horrible feeling. Anyone who's been a site owner for any amount of time should be very worried about that, and probably is very worried about that. And I guess the only thing worse than that is not having any studies at your site and not having anything on the horizon. But then you've got to ask yourself, do you really have a business, right? So business development should be, don't do like I used to do and rest on your laurels, because there were years where I was doing that. I had my reasons. We were busy. I had my hands full. I was wearing many hats. I didn't have the luxury of having a consulting company like mine do BizDev for me in the background, or even hire people to do BizDev for me constantly. Because if to truly do BizDev the way I'm about to break it down for you, using email only, you can throw in some phone calls too, but these days email is preferred. I actually don't like it when people call me. I prefer when they email me, although feel free to call anytime, 949-415-6256, unless I am just feeling bored. I will probably ignore your call initially until I get to know who you are, but you can leave a voicemail. However, in a text message, I will respond right away. So, and an email as well. So probably these study sponsors and CROs feel the same way. Like, they get pitched all the time. So we're going to get into some best practices from what I've learned. Okay, but it's important to differentiate between the inbound leads that you'll get, which, again, if you're lucky enough to get, you will get, and yes, you can build a career off of that. Although it's not a recommended strategy, business development should be critical to your... it should be like one of your biggest activities that you do as a site owner. And you don't have to do it yourself, but you just need somebody doing it for you. This is why our client services, where we offer BizDev for our clients, and all you have to do is the follow-ups, which I'm going to get into now. There's so much bang for your buck there. So inbound, you can get those eventually. Outbound is what you need to get studies for right away. So outbound is probably where you're going to be starting out when you're a brand new site, unless you get lucky enough and somehow get handed a study before you start a clinic. It's very unlikely that that's going to be the case. So you're going to have to do outbound, reaching out, cold pitches, warm pitches, right? Most likely it's going to be cold pitches, and it's going to be from clinicaltrials.gov. So the initial email pitch, and again, this is just, feel free to experiment yourself. From my experiences, I like to send short initial inquiries, especially if they're cold, and when possible, customize it for the specific study. I know it's hard, especially if you're emailing 100 clinicaltrials.gov leads a day, or 25 a day, whatever you feel like doing. But just like anything in life, the more work you put into something, the better returns you're going to get out of it, right? If you're sending everyone a canned email, and you're sending 100 canned emails a day where the recipients can tell that it's a canned email, guess what? That still is much better, dare I say infinitely better, than not doing anything at all. Much better. So if you're going to choose between doing nothing and sending 100 canned emails a day, I would do that. You're still going to get something out of it, because you're going to find some sponsors at the right time, at the right moment, where they actually need sites. However, there could be a more effective way, and that is customizing each email pitch for that particular study, which takes time and effort. Side note, my BizDev company will try to customize it at least to the particular indication. So if one of your PIs specializes in a certain therapeutic area of expertise, we will customize it for that when we're applying for those kind of studies. When we're not applying for studies, when we're applying for studies outside of your PI's area of expertise, they're more like a canned email. However, they are customized with the indication. So instead of saying we're interested in your study, we say something like we're interested in the asthma study or the schizophrenia study. Now, what you should do is customize it even more. And this is where you can do it in the follow-up as well. But in the initial pitch, the best way to do it, which for us would be just unrealistic to offer to all of our clients because it just takes a tremendous amount of time. We would have to charge 4 times more than what we do. It's customize every single email for that study. We at least are able to break it down for therapeutic indication and medical specialty. So that's a step above a canned email. Now, the way you should do it, and I just helped the client do this, is customize it for that particular study. Now, here is the email wording, and I'm going to leave out who it is. But essentially, you are most likely not the PI. So when you reach out to a lead from clinicaltrials.gov, introduce yourself. Don't start with the company name and then a dash that looks like a press release, that looks canned. I would not read that. Start with, my name is Dan, and I'm the site director for Global Clinical Trials. Now here's where you start to customize. If it's a study that I know my PI can do well on, and I know it's in his area of expertise, I'll start talking about that particular indication. For example, schizophrenia. Dr. Kellogg, who is the PI for my clinic, is board certified psychiatrist and has X amount of years, I think it's like 20 years of experience doing research and private practice and hospital care for patients with schizophrenia. As a matter of fact, this is how many patients he has in his database for schizophrenia. And these are the treatment breakdowns based on percentages for the average schizophrenic, right? 50% are taking antipsychotic, 20% take antipsychotic with a mood stabilizer, 15% take an antipsychotic with a depression. I'm just making these numbers up. It's been a while since I've pitched, but we have people pitching now 9 to 5, 24/7. Well, 9 to 5 is not 24/7, but 9 to 5, I guess that's 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So when at all possible, customize. Now, you don't want to write a novel. That's another mistake that a lot of sites make is, and again, writing a novel is infinitely better than not sending anything, and I think it's a step above sending a canned email. But it's not the most effective, at least in my experiences. I think you should save your novel for the follow-up when you know that that particular lead has an interest in you and has sent a feasibility survey out to you. And you can follow up after you complete that feasibility survey with your novels. Okay. Now, I've written a few novels in my career. Every year, when I really want to get a study, I mean, there's studies, and then there's studies that you really want. Every year, there's about 3 studies for my site that I'm sitting at here, and for my other site, 2-hour drive east of here in San Bernardino. Every year, there are 2 or 3 studies where we really want to get those studies. That's when the novels come out. And by novel, I mean really whatever it takes. But the same thing I just mentioned, who you are, who the PI is, links to the website for the research site, links to the website for your PI's private practice if they have one, treatment breakdown, patient numbers for that indication, who the sub-Is are, who the coordinators are, how many studies you've done in the past for that indication, what did you say you were going to enroll, how many did you actually enroll. By the way, there's no way they can confirm these numbers, but it's good to put it in there. And I'm not telling you to lie, but there's no way they can confirm unless it's one of their former studies or that CRO's former study. And another way they can trick you there is they can ask you at the site selection visit what your past studies were and how many you enrolled. And if the numbers are not the same and someone's astute enough to look at your email pitch and then the monitoring report from the site selection visit, they're going to have questions. But again, let's not get sidetracked. So that's where the novels can come in, the big email pitches. And if it's that important to you, I would go get a customized brochure. I would go on Fiverr, have someone design a brochure about your capabilities specifically for whatever indications that you're applying for. These are for the studies you absolutely have to have. Go get a brochure printed out. Yeah, you almost want to have like a white paper. I've had like a semi-business plan PowerPoint presentation that I emailed, and then I had a brochure that I physically mailed to these people on studies I was trying to get. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You better try, because if it does work, it'll be well worth it for you. It just takes more effort, right? But you're not going to do that most of the time. Most of the time, you're going to send a generic or slightly modified generic email for the particular study. At least customize it for the study, right? You don't need to necessarily break down treatments and how many past studies you've done. Save that for the follow-ups. But send the initial email, okay? Now, as a rule of thumb, this is from me. Maybe other people can write more effective email pitches. I don't think it's really what you write necessarily as as opposed to just having your email reach the right person at the right time. And there's no way to predict who's looking for studies other than looking at the active not recruiting on clinicaltrials.gov or the active enrolling. Maybe they need add-on sites, or maybe you hear from a colleague at an investigator meeting, hey, email this sponsor because they're desperate for new sites. They don't have any patients here. I think you'd be a good fit. Then you can email that person and probably follow up with them a few times. That's a warm lead. Okay, cold lead, you're flying blind. You have no clue where they are in the study. You don't know any other site that's participating in the study, so you don't have any intel. You send the same email. The initial one should be short. Now, if it's a study that's very important to you, maybe a little bit longer with metrics, and then, like I said, try the brochure or a PowerPoint presentation of your site. Another thing you should do is for every indication that you specialize in. So there's no way to do this for every single indication that's out there, but every indication, the top 3 or 4 or 5 indications that your PI or your site, the ones that you're confident you can enroll lots of patients for, and by lots I mean above average for those studies, you should have a 3 to 7 slide PowerPoint presentation, which you can convert into a PDF file to attach to those indications, to those studies that have those indications that you have the slide deck for. But that's like for us, that would be schizophrenia or bipolar or major depressive disorder, and just update those as you go. Like as you finish one of those studies, put your metrics in there. Even if they're not so good, at least you're being honest. Like if you promise to enroll 10 subjects in a schizophrenia study, and on one of the studies you enrolled only 7, right? At least the sponsor can read through the BS. They can see through the BS and see that you are most likely telling the truth if you're putting your underwhelming results on these slides as well. So again, they're not stupid people. Be smart about it. Obviously, if you only had one previous study in your therapeutic indication that you're really wanting to go after, and you did horribly, you don't want to put your metrics. Maybe focus on something else that you did well there. Like, what would be good? Like I was about to say queries and how quickly you entered data, but there's no way for you to confirm that because unfortunately sites don't have access to their metrics that the sponsors are looking at or the CROs are looking at when they are sort of giving sites a report card or a credit score or magic number or golden number. Every organization has it differently, but maybe you can focus on your SOPs, for example. For our site, in our SOP, study coordinators need to enter data within 48 hours of a visit occurring, and they need to answer queries within 72 hours of a query being open. So maybe you can include those things in there instead of, ideally you want to put treatment breakdown, how many patients are in the database, what the typical standard of treatment is, how it breaks down by percentage, maybe demographics. Sometimes sponsors like to see that you have minority participation. Sometimes it could work against you. We just did a podcast episode with Monica on this, where for the sites that only have Spanish speaking populations, you don't want to put yourself in a corner where the sponsor's concerned that you can't get any English speaking patients because maybe they have issues with Spanish translated material for that study. So you got to be careful with those. But ideally, metrics for past studies would go great on those slides, and also give them a Cliff Notes version of those slides on your follow-up emails. So here's how you do it. The first email pitch that you send, who you are, what the site name is, a link to the website, who the PI is, how many years of experience do they have, how many years of experience does your coordinator have, what kind of studies do you do, why you think you can do good for this study. That's it. Any questions, let me know. I will do a CDA immediately. I will return a feasibility survey immediately. I always end my emails with that. Please send me a CDA and I will get it back to you the same day or next business day at the latest, and then follow through on that. And same thing with the feasibility survey. So they want to see speed. Sometimes these sponsors, especially for add-on studies, for add-on sites, they want quick turnaround time and they want a quick startup regulatory time. So you can even include that in your email pitch. Our site typically negotiates contracts within 1 to 2 weeks and has a 1 to 2 week turnaround time on regulatory. So I'm going to have to revise my client's pitch a little bit here. Have a 1 to 2 week turnaround time on regulatory because I'm doing it, or whoever's doing it, you could CC them on it. So I think that's a good initial pitch. Most of them are going to get ignored, maybe 90%. But that's okay, because you want those 10% that won't ignore you. Now, from those 10, let's say you send 100, 90 ignore you, 10 don't. From those 10 that don't, some of them are going to tell you that they don't need any more sites right now, but they're happy to keep your information for future trials. That's good. You want to put those in your CRM. We're going to get into CRM in a little bit. Customer Retention Management Tool, I think it's what it's called. Basically, it's a database for you to know, to track and monitor your leads and your follow-ups, which is really where all the magic happens, is in the follow-ups. Follow up, follow up, follow up. I love that slogan. There's a reason why I've had that slogan on my videos pretty much since I started. I think I randomly said it once in a video and it was just catchy. At least to me it was catchy, and so it became the tagline. So it's really important for not just getting studies, anything in life. Follow up is where the magic happens. So let's go back. So send the initial email pitch. 90 will get ignored, 10 will respond. Of those 10 that respond, most will say we're not interested, but we'll keep your info for future studies. That's good. We'll get back to that. The other half of those that respond will say they'll either ask you more questions or they'll send you a CDA. That's great. Once they send you the CDA, get it back to them immediately. I think my record was 2 minutes, and the sponsor was actually extremely impressed. It started with an email, cold email. I emailed. They responded with a CDA. I printed it, signed it, scanned it, emailed it back, all within 2 minutes. The sponsor called me. They said this is they even said this was a record for us. They were a small biotech, so they were cool. This was not like a big pharma that wouldn't even notice those kind of things. This was like somebody that wanted to have another site in their database for this study, and it sounded like I was doing them a favor by reaching out. So that's the cool thing about the BizDev. Sometimes you're actually helping the person receiving the email. Like, they actually are happy that they got your information. It's rare, but it happens. So that's why we do it. And that study, that sponsor, by the way, this was in 2008 or 9, has given us, and now we've had probably four sites. So I started with one, ended up with 4 sites in my network. I no longer own all 4. I own 2 of them now. We have new ones that we've opened, but 4 of my sites eventually got repeat business from this same sponsor, even after they got acquired by a big pharma, because the big pharma acquired them, but they allowed them to operate independently within the company umbrella, and that made a good impression. So CDA turnaround time is important. Of course, none of that repeat business would have happened if we didn't actually produce good results for the study, right? It doesn't matter how quickly I sent them back a CDA or answered a feasibility survey. If we didn't actually provide good, clean data and enroll a good amount of patients, they probably would not have come back. So that's important as well, but that's videos for another topic. That's a podcast for another topic. That's more on the site operations. This is all about the email pitch. So now is the follow-up time. Okay, and let's get to the CRM. So I use HubSpot. I have found no reason why I should use the paid version. I totally would, but the free version is so good that I don't see the need to pay for it. Maybe I'm missing something, so let me know what I'm missing by not having a paid CRM like Salesforce or a premium version of HubSpot. But I use HubSpot, the free version. It's worked great. First of all, anyone that I send an email to gets put in there. Email, name, whatever information I have. Then, depending on what they do, they either ignore. That's okay. I don't do anything with the ones that ignore me. They reply and say no. They reply and say no, but we'll keep your info. Or they reply and say, yes, here's a CDA. I make notes for that lead in my CRM. And then I set reminders. I set alerts for myself so that I know what to do and when automatically. And I think what the premium version does is it will email them automatically without you having to do anything, which I think the reason I haven't done it is because I don't know what the email is going to tell them to do, and I don't want to have any screw-ups, so I'd rather just do it myself. It ends up not being very many, maybe a few a week that I have to email a follow-up, and it's a quick follow-up. Or it could be a long follow-up depending on what kind of a lead it is, right? So put them in the CRM, HubSpot, and then set reminders. The ones that ignored you, what I do is every 3 months I will follow up with them. I set it up automatically, and I'll send them the same email. Maybe I'll tweak it a little. Your email pitch, feel free to tweak it. I mean, experiment with what works best for you. The ones that reply and say no, same category, 3 months. The ones that reply and say no, but we'll keep your info for future trials, I also put for 3 months, but I will have a different follow-up with them. I won't send them the same email I sent the other ones. I'm going to send them more of a follow-up email. Hey, I recently, 3 months ago, I reached out to you regarding this study, and you had indicated that you were not looking for sites at that time, but you were going to keep my information for future studies. If you can, reply to that same thread that they sent to you so that they can see the history, but that's not that important. But you can say something else there, like, hey, this is, since then we have done this study, and this is what we currently have, and we really think that we can do well for your studies in these therapeutic indications. Usually these sponsors or CROs, they segment their staff based on therapeutic indications. Like there's CRAs that strictly work for oncology. There's CRAs or project managers that strictly work for CNS. So these are the people you're reaching out to. Usually they're like separated by therapeutic indication. Not always, but sometimes. But if they're not, you want to kind of figure out what therapeutic indication studies they may have. Maybe go on clinicaltrials.gov and look up what kind of studies that sponsor is doing if it's a sponsor. If it's a CRO, you have no way of knowing other than just assuming that the same person who you reached out to 3 months ago about an asthma study is probably going to have some kind of studies in their respiratory area. So that's what I would do to the ones that say no, but we'll keep your info for future studies. So that's a different follow-up email. Nothing fancy, just, hey, this is what we've done since then. Would be happy to fill out any CDA and feasibility survey. Now, the ones that when you initially emailed them that told you, yes, here's a CDA, and then let's say you send them the CDA, then they send you a feasibility survey, and then you complete that, but now there's radio silence for, could be months sometimes. You want to follow up regularly with that person every 2 weeks. So I would set it for every 2 weeks if you don't get a site selection visit scheduled. And what you want to do, It could be simple. These ones don't have to be long because you might be doing them frequently and you don't want to annoy somebody that's about to send somebody to your site for a site selection visit potentially. So you want to these ones are really quick. Hey, I've recently filled out a feasibility survey. This is my PI. This is my site. Would love to know when you're planning on scheduling a site selection visit or what the current status of the study is, because sometimes they'll get back to you and say, hey, the study's delayed for a few months. The sponsor had to rewrite the protocol, or sometimes they won't tell you anything. But if you keep emailing them, and in a nice way, but you're still being assertive, and you're letting them know that you want some information. At this point, what you're doing is you're searching for information. When can we expect a site selection visit? If they tell you that the study has been delayed for 6 months, then you know not to follow up with them every 2 weeks. Follow up with them 1 month before that 6-month period is over. So you'll adjust your HubSpot accordingly. So that's how you follow up. That's the CRM that you use, and you just repeat this process until you get site selection visits, right? And track all of this in your CRM, track it all in your HubSpot, experiment with the different wordings and the brochures and the colors. I haven't gone as in depth as to what colors to use or what subject lines to use to get them open. I haven't played around with those kind of hacks. I don't think they're that important. They probably help improve open rates a little bit, but at the end of the day, if a sponsor is not interested in new sites reaching out, doesn't matter what your email subject line is, they're not going to open the email. And unfortunately, most of your emails will go ignored, but don't let that stop you from continuing to do this and continuing to be consistent, because that is what works. Follow up, follow up, follow up. Extremely important. And tweak your follow-up emails based on the situation. And the studies that you really want to get, you better become very friendly with those people who you're talking to. I've sent people Starbucks gift cards. I've sent them in Christmas cards or in 4th of July, whatever holiday is close. Send them a quick note with a Starbucks gift card. Say, hey, I just wanted to share my appreciation with you. Fellow hardworking clinical researchers, it's good to network and keep in touch. Here's some information on our site, something like that. Some won't like that, many will, and it may help more often than not. So every year, at least for me, there's 3 or 4 studies I really want, and I try to friend those people on LinkedIn, send them a brochure, send them maybe a little card in the mail. Play around with strategies, see what works. Obviously, going to conferences and networking with these people, like if you're talking to a project manager that goes to conferences, you probably want to find out what conference they go to so you can cultivate those relationships, because it's worth it. It's worthwhile to keep your pipeline full. So that's it. Hopefully not too long and not too boring. Hopefully this is able to produce some practical returns for you. And that's how you do the email pitch. Talk to you all later. Take care.